Hey everybody, Professor Snart checking in. Happy Monday. Hopefully you had a good weekend. So we are now, it's almost hard to even think about it this way. We're in week 2 of our 5-week course, even though our first week was a little bit abbreviated because of our Tuesday start. And also a lot of the work we were doing was just kind of getting oriented in the course, right, settling in, doing some introductions, so not a lot of really labor-intensive stuff. And even the grading was kind of just I don't want to say easy, but it wasn't about like sentence level construction and all of the composition-y type things that we'll get into. So kind of easing our way in, but even that in the 5-week term seems like pretty intensive. Speaking of which, we now want to keep an eye on due dates as they're unfolding in front of us because they'll come pretty quickly. So again, we finished up that first unit, right, our introductions unit, with our double due date system. So initial posts, initial work, main work due on that at noon, right, on that first due date. And then any replies for discussion boards would be coming at the end of the day on Thursday or whatever due date we happen to be talking about. So we now have, in order to give ourselves a little bit more flexibility as we get deeper into the course, we're going to double up on units 2 and 3 here. Again, kind of getting into more of the content for our course as opposed to just more of the introduction stuff. Noticing that both units 2 and 3 are due together on Tuesday, June 6th. So again, that means, right, main posts, main work, quizzes, stuff like that, due at noon on that date. And then we have till the end of the day to finish up replies and that kind of stuff. So just a quick note on grading then. In addition to the fact that, especially in discussion boards, I'm really less concerned with, the things that we might look for in an essay about overall organization or like sentence level stuff, that kind of like writing type of stuff, than I am with more of the investment in like responding to whatever the prompt is, kind of tying threads together from other things that maybe we've talked about in class, especially as, we get deeper into the course, bringing in course material, right? So again, you might want to look at the grading guidelines, especially the discussion boards, to see, in a general sense, what we're looking for. It's hard to provide any really specific, like a checklist of things you must have, because discussion boards are different depending on what the prompt is, and I'm sort of leery about providing a lot of examples for fear that students, and I think it would be natural to do this, that just sort of try to copy, right, the example. If you're told that that's the good one, then of course that's what you would do. But there are lots of ways to achieve the objectives of the discussion boards and to do well. So that's a specific thing. So in other words, you can do quite well on early discussion boards, but you still have to pay really close attention to the essays and not think, well, if I was able to not maybe invest so much time or do things at the last minute and still kind of get by, I do have to warn that will sort of catch up with you when we get into units like even number 3 has a slightly more formal writing assignment, where I am looking for more of the composition type of things that we'll be talking about in our course, specifically in Unit 3. So, keep in mind that not all things are graded sort of on the same criteria, especially when it comes to like a discussion board versus, let's say, our full essay or a slightly more formal writing assignment like we'll see in Unit 3. The other note that I want to give you about grades is that our whole course is out of 1,000 points. A nice round number, so you can figure out if something in a unit is worth like 10 points, you sort of have a relative measure of that versus, let's say, an essay that's out of 100 or even 300. And again, the essays, for obvious reasons, I think, are really where most of the points in our course come. So what you want to do when you get a grade back, and again, you have to fight the natural impulse that I think most students have, and again, I speak for myself as a student, just like you guys are, is that you kind of do the mental calculations. So let's say you get a 40 out of 50 on a discussion board. You've probably done a pretty good job, maybe not developed replies or done some quotation or sort of fleshed things out as fully as possible, but you've done a pretty competent job. So in your mind, if you think, oh, 40 out of 50, that's like an 80%, that's like a low B, just barely a B, why did I do so badly? I want to discourage you from doing that calculation, even though, again, I think it's like our natural thing to do. But always just think of the grade in terms of that raw number. So not even so much like 40 out of 1,000, although even that gives you a sense of like the relative, measure of what we're doing. But if you figure like the difference between 40 and 45, if in your mind that becomes the difference between, oh no, a B versus an A, and why didn't I get an A, et cetera, et cetera. Again, totally natural inclination to do, but keep in mind we're talking about like 5 out of a whole 1,000 points. So really you lose sight of, what's that phrase? You can't see the forest for the trees. Basically, you get so fixated on just the minutia of the points and their individual value that you don't see that bigger picture. So 40 out of 50 on a discussion board probably again means not that you did badly, but just that it wasn't really an above and beyond kind of post or set of post and replies. 45 out of 50 means you did really, really well, right? 50 out of 50, or that full points, is really reserved for like an extraordinarily well-developed, thoughtful post, equally well-developed, time-intensive replies. So always keep that raw point value in mind. And again, once we get into the essays for our course, which, like I said, hopefully this makes sense, that's where the major points are. So, almost half, I think, of the entire 1,000 points are built into the 2 essays that we write. The first one, and then we turn right around towards the end of our course to finish up the last one. So you can sort of, I wouldn't expect anybody to be getting 100%, let's say, on every little thing that we do leading up to the essay. I mean, it's great if you are investing that kind of time and energy, but for most people, that's sort of an unrealistic expectation. So always keep that raw point value in mind, and that really it's the essays that matter, because we're bringing so many pieces together. And that's kind of how our course is built now that we get into it. It's called scaffolding, right? So you learn skills or ideas. We have the opportunity to practice them in kind of like compartmentalized ways in units 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 6, where we talk about sources, and then we pull it all together in our first essay. Again, doing lots of stuff. The grading is, I don't again want to say harder, but it's more comprehensive, let's say that. And so, right, naturally, that's where the points are. So even if it goes against your normal student instincts, always try to keep just that raw point value in mind, and don't get too hung up in the weeds early on, because you really want to reserve your energy for the major assignments that we're doing. So I'm going to jump into Unit 3, because that is kind of like the cornerstone, I would say, in terms of composition. One of the composition ideas that we want to learn for our course. So we'll get to the paragraph assignment, which I'll pop into here, but has this really elaborate, right, description. I mean, it's longer than a paragraph for you to write a paragraph. But it's it's trying to make as obvious and transparent as possible the requirements, like what is expected of you. Or put another way, like here's the stuff we've learned in class, or a large majority of it up to this point. Can you now, right, do an assessment, do a test, let's say, in this case writing a paragraph, where you put those skills into practice. That's what we're looking for. There's nothing more or less complicated than that. And so again, if you're not doing the things that are described here in the assignment, but also in the earlier folder, especially this first one that I'll go into, that's where you lose points for the assignment. So it's not some sort of subjective, mystical, magical thing where you're just guessing at how it's supposed to be. Always keep in mind that you're trying to connect, right, the theory of what we discuss here to the practice of the assessment. And the idea that's repeated here in a number of formats, the video, the still, right, image, the text description, the labeling, all this stuff, it's really about one of the most fundamental sort of composition ideas we want to cover, and that's managing the relatively general and the relatively specific within either a full essay, or the pattern kind of repeats in every body paragraph that we might have in an essay. So we always want to start with the most, we'll call it general, but again, this is still fairly narrowly focused. We don't want big statements about history, society, the universe, right? All of that really big stuff, and then try to get down where his neck kind of is here to a really specific thesis statement about a work that we've read for this particular class. That's going like way too broad to where we want to go way too quickly. So we still want to stay relatively focused as we get towards our thesis. Same thing in a body paragraph. The topic sentence lays out the idea, right? And then everything that follows in the guy's body here fits within whatever topic or thesis we've laid out, either for the essay or for the body paragraph. And again, specific detail or quotation will make up the body of the body. And then the conclusion, honestly, kind of the least important part of our concerns. We restate the idea, and that's sort of it. We don't want to draw too many humongous conclusions or solve the problems of the universe, but we reiterate the idea without copying exactly, and then we're kind of done. So it's really the introduction that we're interested in, and then of course crafting good body paragraphs that will make up the body of the guy. So this is the theory that we'll talk about here that will then sort of test in practice when you write that paragraph. Paragraph is focused on the reading for this unit, which is a short story called Flight Patterns by Sherman Alexie, a Spokane Indian author. Written a number of books, both novels, short stories, some creative nonfiction as well. He's a pretty good speaker. He's pretty funny. So here we are, right? A paragraph, we're analyzing one aspect of the main character, not a whole bunch of stuff. So really just do your best to follow the instructions that are laid out here, the reminders that are provided in the other part of the assignment, and again, really trying to connect what we learned in class, and then here's the test on what we learned. It doesn't take that usual Scantron format, but it's still the equivalent, basically. It's, I hate to say formulaic, but it's right step by step. There's not a lot of wiggle room. Of course, you create your own sentences, right? And that's the creativity part, and you have your own idea that you're putting forward, but you really need to follow, right, what's provided here. So again, the grading here is about, did you follow the step-by-step pieces of the paragraph that we want to put into place? And this, of course, will be the type of paragraph that is like the body paragraph in the essays that we write. So this isn't like something we do and then never return to. You get a grade and you just forget about it. We'll return to this every time we do a formal piece of writing, especially, of course, in the essays, where I'll be looking, does the student understand the concept? Can the student apply the concept in a real writing situation? Okay, and then we always want to keep an eye on those due dates, because as soon as we finish up 2 and 3, we're on to 4, 5, slightly more regular pattern as we move through the rest of the course. And again, we're in week 2 already, so it goes quickly. All right, so I'll leave it at that. If you have any questions, concerns, by all means be in touch with me, and I will talk with everybody again soon.